So I try and find anything to keep my interest when I start to feel like maybe I'm getting lazy and I don't want to work on that book. I watch one of my favorite movies and that gets the juices flowing again. So, yeah, I try and give advice to writers if they're feeling that they're burned out, then go do something that you really really love to do, one of your hobbies. And do that for about an hour or watch your favorite show, a movie series, or listen
Right.
to a podcast and then just see if the inspiration starts to come back again. And it usually does.
Some experts chase attention, but the smart ones build authority. You're listening to the Authority on Demand podcast, where credibility becomes your competitive advantage. Every week, we're pulling back the curtain on how founders and leaders turn expertise into inbound demand through books that position, media that converse, and strategies that actually move the needle. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authority on Demand. Now, let's turn your authority into leverage.
Okay, everybody, get ready to be swept away to the cobblestone streets and golden light of Italy because on today's episode, we are joined by the delightful Ruth Douthitt, author of Love and Romance in Italy. It's a series of books that follow three friends as they go on journeys of self-discovery and love in Rome, Venice, and Florence. And these stories are more than romance, they're about transformative power of travel and friendship and the beauty of second chances. So, we're going to be chatting all about the book and about Ruth herself. So get ready. It's going to be a fun conversation. Ruth, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Danielle. I appreciate it.
Hey, real quick before we jump back in, if you're loving what we're doing here, hit that subscribe button and drop us a like. We're bringing you the best authors, the most real conversations, and all the writing wisdom that you didn't know you needed. So stick around because it only gets better from here. All right, now let's get back to the conversation.
Yeah, of course. I'm really excited. I love to travel as well. I've been to these locations myself. I guess the first question that you probably always hear is, you've traveled here too? This is based on some real experiences?
Yes, absolutely. My husband and I went to Rome in 2018 for our wedding anniversary, and I also ran the Rome Marathon there.
Oh, wow.
And it was a really difficult race. And when I crossed the finish line, I told my husband, I have a story. This is going to make a book. So I got home, and about 2 or 3 years later, I wrote the book. And then that spawned two more stories set in Italy. So, yeah.
I love that. So as you were running this marathon is when you were kind of thinking about the story itself and the characters and the plot. Is that true during that run?
Well, as I was running, I didn't really spend a lot of time training for it, but I kind of just had this cocky attitude of, oh, I can do it. It's no big deal. I have muscle memory. I can run this race. And I forgot that it was 7 miles of hills. They call it the city of seven hills for a reason. And it was a lot of hills. And it was hot that day. And by the time I got to mile 16, I was done. I wasn't sure I could go one more step. So I sat down, which is a big no-no in marathon running, right? Because there's a lot of times where you won't get back up. But I had to. I was just so exhausted. And I thought, how am I going to get to the finish line? And so I just prayed. I was like, "Oh, help me get to the
Oh.
finish line." I was so scared. And then all of a sudden I heard this man like clapping his hands and saying, "Get up, get up, get up." And I
Oh.
looked, and it was a local Italian man who was also in the marathon, and he reached out his hand and he helped me up. And he said, "Walk, don't run, walk." And I said, "Okay." And so we walked about 9 miles together, and he was a native. So he explained the sights that I was seeing, and he told me his life story. And it was just so remarkable. And when we got to about mile 25, I nudged him and I said, "Come on, let's run across the finish line." So we ran across the finish line. And so we went out to dinner that night. I was telling my husband, this could be a really good story. I'm going to have to form a fictional story around this experience because it was so amazing. It was like a metaphor for life, where you want to give up and then God sends you somebody to help you.
Yeah, even what he said to you is also a metaphor for life, like walk, don't run, just like
Yes.
take your time and enjoy and let things come to you. So I love that. So is that kind of a plot point that happens in the book then? Something very similar with the marathon?
Yeah. The story follows Millie, and she's in her 50s, and she just runs casually with her best friend, Edith. And Millie's just kind of thinking that life has passed her by. And
Mm.
she wants to have all these adventures, but her husband keeps saying, when I retire, then we'll travel. And just on a whim, she enters a photography contest and she wins. And
Oh.
first prize is an all expenses paid trip to Rome for two. So she thinks, well, now my husband's definitely going to go with me. But he refuses. He says work is too important right now. So she takes her best friend Edith with her. But her best friend makes her promise, if we go, we're going to run the Rome Marathon together. And Millie's like, "What? Are you crazy?" Because in her college days, Millie was a marathon runner and she was up for the Olympics, but she got injured. So
Mm.
her friend says, "Yeah, you can do it. You've run hundreds of marathons." And she said, "Yeah, like 25 years ago. I'm not like that anymore." She goes, "Yeah, you can do it." So they go and they have this adventure there in Rome because, as part of the contest winning, the winners have to go there and then photograph Rome. They have to find one thing in Rome that they want to photograph. And so Millie chooses the doors of Rome. They're all so unique and beautiful. So she chooses to photograph the doors of Rome. And as she meets all these other winners there, she's intrigued by their life stories. Each group, each person, each winner of the contest, there's 5 winners, brought someone with them. There's a mother-daughter team, there's a father-son team, there's a couple of married couples there, and then there's Edith and Millie.
Right.
And as they photograph Rome, they get to know one another. And she finds out that all of them have these stories to tell, and they're very similar to her own story of life. And then comes the marathon. And so Millie is so concerned that they're not going to be able to finish because she's so out of shape. So yeah, I threw it in there as a way for Millie to, like you said, figure out that sometimes adventure comes and you're not ready for it. But you can
Right.
walk. You don't have to run, but you can walk and give yourself permission to just slow down and enjoy life. And so that's pretty much the premise of the story. But
I know what it's like to like just be sweating and looking for the nearest, just place to sit down and rest for a little bit. So I could totally relate to what, the characters and you were feeling too. So I love it. That's amazing.
thank you.
Very cool story, and I think there's no better way to come about the story than the fact that you lived it yourself. So that's just really cool. But what about the writing process? I mean, you mentioned just a little bit ago that you had the idea, but a couple of years later is when you wrote it. So what was the delay?
Yeah, I hadn't written for women before. I've always written for kids, and I had done a YA book, a contemporary story. So I kind of wanted to learn a little bit more about writing for contemporary because going from fantasy to contemporary, there can be some challenges there. But actually, I found that it was really easy. It was actually easier to write about contemporary than it is a mythical dragon, land, a forest that doesn't exist anywhere and flying dirt. So I just had to try out a little bit. I wrote a few short stories, a novella, and then a YA contemporary. And when I was done with that, I say about 3 years went by, and I was ready to start to write the Doors of Rome. So writing is hard. It's a lot of work, and it doesn't come easy for me. For some people, it's really easy, but it takes a little bit of time and effort for me. I really wanted to plot it out and develop the characters. I knew the ending. I had the ending already done, but now I had to write about Millie and what's her motivation and what's going to happen with her marriage and all that stuff and the doors, what were the doors of Rome going to represent? They're a metaphor for something. And so I had to just really spend some time and reflection. And I had the story going a certain direction, and my husband was like, no, 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 don't do that direction. So then I had to bring it back and go in a different direction. And so I had to bounce ideas off of friends and my husband and stuff to make sure that it was what I wanted it to be. I guess that's why it took a few years.
Right. Well, hey, everyone has their own path, right? I mean, just like the characters in your book, it kind of is something that you got to come across in your own time, and that's kind of what happened here, I guess. So, I think a lot of people listening to can relate to that as well. We all have an idea, but the writing process can be difficult, and you got to find the right methods that works for you. So that being said, I'm wondering, well, what's funny is I actually have like a list of questions I was going to ask you, but I haven't asked a
Great.
single one because I've just been chatting with you about this. Um, so yeah, I mean, like, one of them I had here was like, walk us through your normal writing routine. I mean, do you have any rituals or habits that help you stay focused and creative?
Well, I do try and find inspiration around me. So I'm writing suspense right now. So I've been writing a lot of listening to true crime podcasts and watching true crime documentaries.
Mm,
But and pull inspiration from other books that I've read, whether they're nonfiction or fiction. That always gets the juices flowing. But I have, like a dozen stories going on in my head at the same time. So I've never hit a writer's block ever. But there are times when I'm tired. I work full time and I have my own podcast. So there are times when I'm just so tired. But talking about writing like I'm doing now gets me excited, or, talking to a few writers. I went to a writers group the other day and that got me excited. So I try and find anything to keep my interest when I start to feel like maybe I'm getting lazy and I don't want to work on that book. I watch one of my favorite movies and that gets the juices flowing again. So, yeah, I try and give advice to writers to, if they're feeling that they're burned out, then go do something that you really, really love to do, one of your hobbies, and do that for about an hour, or watch your favorite show, a movie series, or listen
right,
to a podcast, and then just see if the inspiration starts to come back again, and it usually does.
right. Okay, yeah, I like that. It makes sense. Like don't try to force something. Try to give yourself a
Yeah.
break and do what you have to do. And then sometimes that'll help you come up with an idea too, or get you re-inspired. And for example, your idea came from the act of running a marathon, which is literally the opposite of what it is to like sit down and write. So sometimes just getting the juice flowing and seeing new scenery and whatnot can definitely spark that inspiration. So I love that. Um, Another question I have, and I'm going to kind of weave together a couple of them, is about the theme of your book. So, one thing that our audience might not know is that you actually do have a master's in mental health and wellness. You facilitate grief share groups. So, would love to touch upon that. But in addition, I'm wondering how that kind of impacted the theme of the book, which is, yeah, kind of like the idea of I guess like second chances, bringing the character relationships, stepping out of your comfort zone. So tell me about that and how does your background influence the theme of the book? I guess to put it simply.
That's a great question. Yeah, there is some grief in the series. One woman is grieving her husband, another is in Windows of Venice. That's the second book. She's grieving the loss of her marriage. Her husband left her for a younger woman.
Mm,
And then in the third book, there's more grief. So I wanted to touch on that because when you get into your 50s, your phase of life changes. And you go from, when you're in your 20s and 30s, you're going to a lot of weddings and a baby showers. And then all of a sudden you get to your 50s and you're starting to attend some funerals. And
mm,
it's such a shock. So I wanted to go back to school and learn more about what grief does to your mental health, your physical health, and your emotional well-being. And I wanted to learn some healthy coping strategies because I've endured a lot of loss myself. So as I learned more about it, healthy ways to cope, one of them is to tap into that creativity. And so the photography theme is in there, that motif. I wanted to talk about how these women come together to comfort each other, to support one another. The theme of resilience runs through all three books because these women are so strong. They're funny, they're quirky, but they're really strong and they don't even realize how strong they are. And a lot of my friends, including myself, when you get into your 50s, you worry about a lot of things and you tend to forget how strong you really are, all the things that you've come through in life, right? So I wanted
mm,
to put that in the book too, the theme of resiliency, and that these women walk away stronger friends, stronger mentally and physically. They just have endured so much together that they inspire one another. It has a bittersweet ending. It's not like a happily ever after thing. They do go through a lot together, but I've had friends who've read the book say they reminded me so much of friends that I know who have endured loss yet have come through the other side much stronger. So for me, that was kind of a theme that I wanted to put through all three books.
Understood. Yeah, I mean, it's a very powerful theme too, something everybody could relate to, everybody goes through, and it is very personal to you as well. So I can only imagine how that passion for it that you've experienced kind of shines through in the book itself. So I love that. But yeah, no, now that the books are out with all three of them, I'm curious to know like what's next on the agenda. Is there another series brewing in your mind or another project you've been working on? What can we be looking out for?
Oh, wow. Yeah. When I finished The Streets of Florence, the last book, my editor and some of my friends were like, okay, where are they off to next? And I thought, no, I'm saying goodbye to these three friends. And they were all sad. But I do want to do another series, but it'll be a suspense series, kind of a cozy mystery. I wrote a Christmas novella called Murder at Christmas Tree Village with these friends. They're older women and they come together to solve a mystery. So I'm thinking about putting them on a cruise ship and writing a series of friends on a cruise ship and what they endure there. And so it'll be a cozy mystery, it'll have some humor in it and some suspense, but the same thing, these women will come away more resilient, realizing that they're a lot stronger than they thought they were. And people around them will realize, hey, they're pretty strong women, they're pretty determined. So now my husband and I just have to go on a cruise. I've never been on a cruise before. So I told him, let's go on a cruise first and I'll do all this research so I can set a 3-book series on the cruises. So we'll see how that goes. So that's probably in a couple years. Next year, I'm working on more suspense. So I'll have a series, 2 series that one I'm finishing up with book 3, the Desert Shadows suspense series, and then I'm gonna start another series, and then there'll be a standalone mystery, thriller, psychological thriller, and then I'm hoping to do another Christmas mystery story for next year, yeah.
Wow, you went from like not writing any books at all to
I know.
all of these. That's just really funny. I love that. Well, really awesome. I guess people can probably then, head to maybe your website to stay up to date with all these releases. What was the best place to head to?
Yeah, my website is artbyruth.com and you can learn about me. You can see my artwork because I'm also a professional artist. You can read my blog, listen to my podcast, and of course, check out all my books. They're all there. And when you click on one of the books, it'll send you to Amazon where you can get all my books. Yeah, it's just a great way to learn a little bit more about me and what I do, when my next projects are coming out. So you can sign up for my newsletter and you'll get a free short story. I wrote a Christmas short story called A Christmas Scene, and that'll
Okay.
give you like an example of my Christmas writing. But
Okay.
yeah, definitely head over to Art by Ruth. You can find me on Instagram as well, our author R.A. Douthitt, and then of course Facebook. Everybody's on Facebook, and I am too. So head over there and let me know what you think. I'd love to engage with my readers.
I love that. Awesome. Well, guys, we're gonna put the links in the description box of this podcast, so you can go ahead and click on over and get in the know and learn more about Ruth and her stories, and of course, pick up the Love and Romance in Italy series. I honestly am gonna have to myself. And the research I did, I was looking through like the sample chapters and the like, synopsis, and I think I need to dive more into it. So hopefully, everybody here also feels the same way. Yeah, I'm curious to know then, do you have any last bits of advice to the audience? Anything that you want them to hold on to as they continue with their day?
Well, for writers out there, keep writing, keep looking around for inspiration to keep those, creative juices flowing. If you feel burned out, then go do something else that you really love to do. And aspiring authors, definitely check out all the podcasts like Danielle's and mine to learn more about the craft, right? And then for those of you who might be struggling with life and wondering if adventure has passed you by, no, it hasn't. Keep going. No matter what age you are, you can still have an adventure. Trust me, I've been there.
Understood. Okay. Well, I love it. I love your inspiration. I love your enthusiasm, and I love your story. So, yeah, guys, check it out. Click on the links, and yeah. Well, Ruth, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a true pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been fun.
Yeah, of course. And to all of our listeners today, I hope you enjoyed the episode. I especially love what she told us about those writing tips and about creating a theme. And yeah, I guess keep in mind that the stories we tell have the power to heal and transform for our readers and for ourselves. So keep writing, keep learning, and keep inspiring. We'll see you next time on the Authors on Mission podcast.
That's a wrap on another episode of the Authority on Demand podcast. If today's conversation sparked something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this episode with a founder or leader who's ready to stop being the best kept secret in their industry. If you want to turn your expertise into inbound demand, head to authorityondemand.com to see how we help clients go from unknown to in demand. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, and I'll catch you on the next one. Now, go build some authority.